Hey, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Caesar, and I manage marketing and communications at Synergy Technical, and I will be moderating today's session. Today's webinar is an overview of the latest Microsoft product announcements and solution updates from Microsoft Ignite 2021 that happened at the beginning of the month. If you don't know, Microsoft Ignite is their annual conference where usually any major technical announcements, product announcements, they all happen at this conference. Just a reminder, the session is being recorded, and please make sure to send any questions through the Q&A function within Teams. And just a little bit about us. Synergy Technical is an IT consulting firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients in over 70 countries in all 50 states and manage over 3 million actually now licenses of Microsoft 365 for our clients through our licensing and managed services practice. In February of 2020, we were awarded the Microsoft 365 Security Deployment Partner of the Year award, which was awesome. And a large part of that success is the work done by today's presenter, Adrian Amos. So Adrian is one of our best sales engineers and solution architects who has deep level experience in the Microsoft suite, both productivity and security, and who's had the honor of running customer immersion experience workshops at Microsoft Ignite for several years, as well as client engagements and more. And this webinar, I guess, brings us a little bit of nostalgia, not being able to do it in person the last 2 years of Ignite because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to be there, but hopefully next year we can go back. And with that, Adrian, I think we're ready to get started. And if you want to start sharing your screen, we can kick things off.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate the kind introduction. So yeah, actually, I am feeling a little nostalgic for Ignite, but I will say the one thing that's been nice about the last, what I guess 3 now that we've done is that by not being presenting on the show floor, I actually get to consume more of the content. So it's been a great opportunity to catch up on all the things that have happened. And also, you know, we were founded in 2011. This is our 10th anniversary. It literally just happened, what, last week? So pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So obviously we're not here to talk about the history of Synergy, but it is been a pretty fun ride. But we did have a lot of ground to cover with all the stuff that came out of Ignite a couple of weeks ago. We had new products, we had new product renames, we had new capabilities that got introduced. We're not going to try to drain everything that Microsoft spoke about for 3 days in 1 hour. So some of this stuff is going to be a little bit high level, some of it we're going to get a little bit deep into. But what I've tried to do is I've looked through the content that was released is find those things that will be most interesting for core businesses, so like organizations that are dealing with hybrid work, organizations that are dealing with both productivity and security, which is kind of where my mix comes together with my background of having done the Wintel architecture for government and commercial enterprises for 20 years. So really excited to dig into this, and I'm going to kick things off with a little discussion about the most popular conversation area to come out of Ignite was Microsoft Loop, right? This is the first major Office app in a few years. Teams was the previous most recent version or solution to come out. This one is based on the work that's been done over the last couple of years in the fluid space. And the first thing I saw or thought of when I first saw Loop being demonstrated was actually way back in like 2016 or 2017, Microsoft had a preview product called GigJam that would allow you to do basically what Loop does. So let's talk about a little bit what Loop is, right? Obviously, it looks a whole heck of a lot like Teams, and in fact, there will be a version of it that lives in Teams, but it is a standalone app. And it's designed to bring together some of the core functions of how we work in a hybrid workspace now. The thought is that we have all of these disparate data types that we need to work on together to produce some end result. And rather than having to say, oh, this is where Microsoft Word ends, let me go open Excel and create a table, and then I got to figure out how to take that table and embed it back into Word. No, these are just objects that live in spaces. So we have workspaces that we set up to operate very much like what we've done in terms of, like, say, Teams, a Teams team, right? Or even, you know, more traditionally with a file repository, right? You do first thing any project group has to figure out is which department's file server is going to get the files, right? Well, this is kind of taking that responsibility. It says, okay, we need to work on something. Let's just frame something up real quick. Here's a workspace. Once we're all in that workspace, we're all collaborating together on pages, right? These they're sort of digital canvases where everything just sort of comes together and we can move things around and operate in real time. But those pages comprise components. And those components are the little chunks of data that may be portions of a Word file, portions of a database or a table. And these chunks are live, and they don't have to be produced in any one particular spot, but they can be presented in any spot we want to. We can drop them into a loop, but wherever they come from, they're still live there. So we're actually real-time collaborating across multiple products in multiple spaces, but being presented all together in one collaborative environment. I did mention this is going to be a standalone app, but it is obviously very, very similar in appearance to what we've come to love in Teams. So obviously, you know, this is going to interact in the Teams space. And I'm actually really curious because this is moving a little bit outside of my comfort zone in terms of how to work together with products. I'm really curious in the Q&A, if you want to get involved, tell us what you have envisioned for Loop. Or in the comments, you know, once this thing goes out on the YouTube, I would love to know what is it that you see as being a use case for Loop. We're excited about it, but I really want to know how you see it being used in your organization. So the other thing that really got a lot of attention was Metaverse, right? This idea that we now have a virtual space in which we can come and collaborate as though we were standing in front of each other, even when we're not. Now, this is not actually a picture from this Ignite. This is a picture from the March Ignite, when the initial concepts of what is now the Metaverse were first unveiled to us. We got Mesh as a concept back in March. And one of the comments that I kept seeing surfacing at the time was it's going to take a lot of community and developer involvement to build out this space. Well, it's been it's been 8 months, right? And there has been a lot of development. In fact, we saw a lot of focus on Accenture's Metaverse space, right? This virtual hub world where people could come together and actually grab conference rooms in that hub world and move back and forth between things and set up workspaces on walls where there's a video playing here and there's a collaboration space happening here, and we're capturing gestures, right? And we're capturing sentiment, and we're capturing all these things that are going on as part of the digital projection of people into these spaces. And so I'm really actually pretty excited about seeing where this is going to go. I think this is going to really change the way that we view how we interact with people. And it is very tempting to look at this and say, well, it's all very silly, right? That there's no way that you're going to be able to mentally trick yourself into believing that an avatar is going to be the same level of somebody who's actually on screen in front of you. But where we see a collision happening between the theoretical and the practical is in Teams, and we know that Mesh is on its way into Teams. And you can look at this picture just like I did, and obviously the red-headed person at the bottom stands out as being a clear digital avatar, right? As does the lady in the yellow dress or yellow cardigan. But the two at the top, actually, I didn't even register them as being avatars as I was first looking at this, right? My mind went to the ones that look obvious, but my brain just let me draw in or fill in the blanks for the two people at the top. So I actually don't see this as being as difficult to transition as it initially seems like it might be. And actually, we're starting to see a lot of people getting really tired of being on camera, right? So this may present an opportunity to get people reinvested in collaborating in spaces like Teams, but without forcing them to present themselves when they may not be at their best versions of themselves. So I'm pretty excited about that. But that's not all that happened in Teams. One of the things that we had been seeing for some time was kind of a back and forth in the capabilities and the excitement around whiteboarding. And there's a couple of different things that happened with relation to whiteboards in Teams. And the first one is the actual whiteboard itself got a complete and total makeover. Whereas we used to just have the pens that were sitting out here, and we could draw some shapes and we could save it and it would be saved inside the meeting. Now we can actually drop in actual objects, right? We can put in notes, we can put in text, we can bring in formatted concepts, and we can actually do all kinds of delicious, wonderful things with this that make it so that those of us who struggle to whiteboard properly, now we can actually work with content like documents, right? Just drop the document in there and then mark up the document. Beautiful, fantastic. But that's not the only thing that happened in this space. One of my absolute favorite things that I have seen in very limited previews, off and on for months, was this ability to share content from a camera. And what this allows you to do is have teams capture a real object that's in your space. Say you've got a whiteboard in the room. You're not drawing on a screen or doing a lightboard presentation or anything else. You have an actual physical whiteboard. And you want to be able to present the content from that real actual whiteboard to people who are not physically present with you. And we tested this at home, actually, because I got it in my team's environment and I was super jazzed about it. And we actually, our kids have little whiteboards that they draw on, and we had somebody stand with the whiteboard, and it captured it. It drew a little box around the whiteboard. And once you start writing on that whiteboard, you can then step in front of the whiteboard, and just like the person in this picture right here, you become translucent. Your content that you draw on the whiteboard becomes static, superimposed over the whiteboard, and big motions like this that erase will erase the content. It's super duper cool. It really makes it possible for people who are not physically present with you to participate as if they were. And it can actually reshape things too. So it can pull things into a more logical shape. So if the whiteboard's kind of off at an angle, right, we can actually make it so it's usable for the people in the room. Super awesome. Now, productivity. Great, love all the stuff in that space. It's not really where I spend a lot of my day. Where I spend a lot of my day is in the security space. And Microsoft, not as a product, but as a evolution, has released a kind of a State of the Union address on the evolution of the zero trust security model, along with a lot of learnings and you know, operational or conceptual improvements over the last couple of years of trading on zero trust, right? So what we've got first is this maturity model. And I've been presenting on the security and compliance maturity model for, I guess, probably about 5 years now. So I was really excited to see this content come with regard to the actual zero trust model. We can now actually help customers identify where they are on the journey, and it's not all in one stack. It's going to be pick and choose. It's going to be piecemeal, but it helps people understand where they are on this journey, right? What is the next achievable goal, and how do we drive to that point, and how do we get buy-in from executive level so that we can actually move up through the ranks? And this model, just having this model for the security and compliance folks for the last 4 or 5 years, has actually really helped people drive operational improvements inside their organizations. But it's not just drawing out the model, it's also drawing out the concept of you know, illustrating the architecture and how things actually fit into this space, and making sure that we can drive policy enforcement with automation, right? Because that's a huge element. We've really got to get to a point where we are automating our zero trust architecture and our threat intelligence and our, you know, threat protection and all that kind of fun stuff, and make sure that we're getting multi-endpoint or multi-input telemetry so that we can actually take intelligent actions, but also so that we're not having to go and chase data and signals all over the place. We want it to come in, automate, and let us know what it's done. And for that, we've actually gotten some really cool capabilities in the identity space. I am a huge fan of Azure Active Directory's conditional access policies, but some of you may recall when Microsoft unveiled the capability to do security defaults for organizations that didn't want to actually build conditional access policies. What those security defaults would do would basically set up the raw elements of conditional access in your environment. They would say that these roles had to have this role had to have that. But the second you turned on any conditional access policy, you would lose those security defaults, which meant that in order to get back up to where you had been before you turned on anything, you had to go and read a lot of articles on what are the roles you need to protect, what are the authentication mechanisms you need to prohibit, what are these things. So what we got 2 weeks ago is the ability to create new policies from templates. Now this is in preview at the moment, but I went ahead and grabbed a couple of the basic default things that you would probably want to start with. The most important one is actually right here, this require multi-factor authentication for admins. If you ever turned off security defaults, then you were probably going to read this article that says there are 12 roles that you need to pre-identify and add them into your conditional access policies. Well, this just builds it. It just does it for you. And all you have to do is choose the template that you want. It tells you exactly what the controls are going to be once it's done. You will want to start with report only in all cases, and you just name your policy and you're off and running. I will call out, though, that in its current preview iteration, these guided scenarios do not check themselves off the list. So while you can come in here and choose a template, simply activating the policy doesn't make that template go away. And we can also do these templates based on identities, and there's a whole separate set of templates based on devices. So there's a lot of great capabilities in here to improve our conditional access capabilities, including some integrated monitoring into this space. Previously, in order to know if our conditional access policies were actually working, we would need to go to the Azure AD sign-in logs. And you can see those are still sitting right here. And a simple trick for folks who want to make sure that they're monitoring for CA policies, if you go to Azure AD and say sign-in logs, you're going to get by default 7 days of logging, whereas if you go here and click on it, you get by default 24 hours. So makes your queries a little bit smaller and makes them a little bit easier to digest, but sort of beside the point. We have this overview of how our policies working. And you can obviously see that this chart predates when this chart existed. So it's actually going back through my old sign-in logs and ingesting this content for me. And you can see there was a huge spike of sign-ins around Ignite as I got in and started doing some more understanding. And we can evaluate and filter down to look at specific policies that we may have and see how those things are behaving over time. We also saw an additional improvement in conditional access policies that pertains to the renaming of Microsoft Cloud App Security to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And we've been waiting for a rename in this space for quite some time, right? We know that Cloud App Security has long been part of the Defender portfolio. I'm still waiting to see if it's eventually going to roll into the security.microsoft.com integrated dashboard. I actually think that might still happen in the first half of next year, just based on the way that all these products seem to be converging and the names and all of that fun stuff. But one of the things that had been requested is we have all these great controls around application reverse proxying for third-party apps that live in the cloud. But what about web app proxy applications that sit on premises and are presented to Azure? There was not a similar set of controls to do things like conditional access app control for those apps until now. And that's actually a huge gap that's now been plugged. And it actually kind of makes it interesting that they chose to name it Cloud Apps, because now it's actually Cloud Apps and your on-premises apps that you can protect equally. So I don't think that maybe just becomes way too long a name. But again, Cloud App Security has now been renamed to Defender for Cloud Apps. It now can ingest and protect web app proxy applications too. So that kind of brings us to talking about Defender as a whole. And one of the new capabilities that we got in this space was Defender for Business. So now actually we don't have to be an whatever customer to be able to benefit from this space. There's now Defender as a solution for SMB customers. Seat count of 300 limit, just like you're going to find with Windows 365, just like you're going to find with the Microsoft 365 business apps and all that kind of fun stuff. But being able to bring those enterprise level controls and security capabilities down into the SMB space is a huge and very welcome play. Kudos to Microsoft for that. We also got a brand new management portal, right? And there's nothing we love more than adding on additional management portals. This one kind of struck me by surprise. It happened actually the week before Ignite, and I got it up in my tenant and I was playing around with it, and I was initially trying to figure out why I would want to have surface management inside my tenant. It seems to kind of overlap some of the capabilities that come in the rest of Endpoint Manager. But then it hit me. There is no other fleet management tool if you are a Microsoft device shop, right? If you have Microsoft Managed Desktop, you get that fleet management component, but that assumes that you are one of those customers in that particular space. If you have Windows 365, you get fleet management for that set of devices. But again, you have to have that in that space. What Microsoft had not previously had was a way to service things like warranty support directly for fleet management inside of a customer portal. And this is really exciting because what this allows us to do is actually raise these controls, get information about our support requests that we may have for device management, and actually be able to integrate all of this stuff into one single place. We can actually see when warranties are about to expire and take actions on them here. And this is just the beginning of this portal, right? We expect to see some pretty substantial investment in this from Microsoft. We get a wonderful view of all the different device types that we have here, including, you know, a little bit about fleet management, from like, are they getting a little bit long in the tooth? Is it time to start looking at replacements? But in that same space, so obviously surface management is a wonderful thing. We're excited about it. We're actually in the process of deploying it internally. And we also got some great additional controls in the Endpoint Manager Intune space around Windows 365, since that kind of lives in that same space. So what we saw is a huge improvement in endpoint analytics, right? That's kind of one of the building blocks that makes it possible for Windows 365 to plug the gaps for hybrid work. Where we're seeing a lot of success with Windows 365 is in smaller businesses that don't have a real IT dedicated group of people who can sit and turn the dials and pull the levers on Azure Virtual Desktop. They just want it to work, and they want to be able to get auditing and reporting on it. They want users to be able to self-service. And this is a really huge improvement for these organizations. But what we have to have is the ability to do some fun things, like allowing users to be a local admin, to do things like device installs and all that kind of, you know, delightful stuff, managing printers. We can actually give users now local admin controls. This popped up at Ignite. We also have some improvements in the work from anywhere capabilities for endpoint analytics. So we can see, hey, you as a user are reporting that you're having challenges. Is the challenge with the Windows 365 environment, or is it with your network, or is it that the device you're actually connecting from may have a challenge of its own? And we also then get scoring for how these devices are working. Are they meeting our goals of delivering a reliable and performant environment to our end users? So this is like really great, because now we can correlate the user comes from this physical device to connect to this virtual device, and this one's not meeting goals, but this one is. Okay, well, now we know where the problem is. So that's really awesome. We also had a promise from the Windows 365 team that they were bringing us native Azure AD join for Windows 365 Enterprise. This is the single biggest request back from the community is, hey, I want to do Windows 365. I'm cloud only. I don't really want to start building out domain controllers and setting up servers and all that kind of fun stuff to basically go backward to go forward. And we saw that Microsoft got Azure Virtual Desktop to a point where there is now native Azure AD join in that space. So we were really excited that Microsoft has committed so publicly to getting the Windows 365 native Azure AD join, and I have word on the street that it won't require some of the same customizations that Azure Virtual Desktop does. Azure Virtual Desktop to go native requires custom roles, and those roles have to be assigned at each individual object. That's okay. That's not going to happen in the Windows 365 space, because in the Windows 365 space, what we expect is you turn it on and it just works. So we're happy to let Microsoft have a little bit more time ironing out the details in the private preview. You can actually sign up to be a member of that private preview. We do expect that that's going to be something that they're going to deliver on very, very soon. We also got, and this almost completely slipped under the radar. I had actually got pinged on this by somebody else entirely after Ignite was over and had to go find sessions on it. We got remote help in Endpoint Manager. And this is really cool, because for the last several years, what we've been seeing a lot of organizations do is they use Teams for screen sharing, right, as a first line of defense to help people work through a problem. And that's great. It works really, really well. Where it doesn't work, though, is when the user is presented with an access prompt. The admin needs to do something at an administrative level, and they click on something like, let's say, regedit. Well, that's going to throw up a screen block while it presents the user on the other side that there's a UAC prompt. They don't know what to put in that space, and we don't want to tell them what to put in that space, so we end up giving them local admin, right? Well, this is going to allow us to actually do remote support sessions and present that UAC prompt to the administrator who's doing the remote help. And I am so over the moon excited about this. It also means that we're not going to have to put TeamViewer on, because I frankly don't know anybody who ever actually did. So we have this remote help capability. Again, it's offered in preview right now. We're going to be able to enable users to solicit remote help, or also enable administrators to offer remote help. We're going to be able to create custom roles. Actually, we'll have to create custom roles and define what a remote help operator can do. And this is really cool, because what it allows us to do is then define multiple tiers of remote help offerings. So we can say that a help desk person can view the screen. Maybe we want to say a tier 2 person can request elevation. Maybe we want to do that in addition to take full control. Or maybe our company policy says we can do elevation, but we cannot do full control because of data types or compliance requirements on this particular device. So we're going to be able to actually tailor this down and get it so the right people can offer the right help to the right people, because that's the other part too, is we can actually define who is able to offer help to whom in this space. So it's really, really cool. I'm really excited about this. I cannot wait to have it in our environment. But you can see here from the administrative side, I can actually find a device that's in here, and I can offer a remote help session. Again, the user can request it as well. And again, here's that UAC prompt. It's presented to me, the administrator, so I can just come in here and type in the password here and hit go. And it's really going to be great. And then we get monitoring on it. So excited about this. We're going to be able to see not just how many active sessions, how many total sessions, but also sessions over time. So we can actually kind of use this to correlate a little bit of information that maybe you track today, maybe you don't track right now. Like, how long are our agents actually working on remote help solutions, right? How many times has John in accounting called in and they requested remote help? You know, what is the actual usage of this? So we're really excited to see where that's going to go. And then we got some great improvements in the Defender for Endpoint space. And first and foremost, we can now actually get threat and vulnerability management on both iOS and Android. I am in the process of ingesting my Android device into our corporate environment. Wish me luck. I don't love being monitored, but you know what? It's going to be for data. I love data. So I'm really excited about this, because this has kind of been a black hole for us for a long time. We've had all this great threat and vulnerability management capability for Windows and for Mac OS, but it's just been kind of a little bit blind on the mobile device side. But that's not all we got. We actually also got some great improvements in terms of managing our security recommendations. Now, those of you who've done anything in the threat and vulnerability management space or in Secure Score, right, you may recognize that you get this top security recommendations on it. And when you click on that, you get this great big long list of all the things that you should be doing as configuration changes or patches. Generally it's configuration changes, but you want to go in here and then you could, we've been presenting for a while that you can throw it over the fence and request remediation from the Intune team. And that's great, right? Because they don't understand necessarily why this is being requested or the security impact. They just know they have a change that they need to make. So we can throw it over the fence at the Intune team, but now we can actually also get information from this space that we've actually partially accepted portions of our environment. And if we can get reporting on that, that means that we can actually create exceptions here too. So we can actually come in here and we can see, you know, this is the remediation request that we sent, we threw over the fence at the Intune team. We can see that they have rejected it. So now we actually have tracking back and forth associated with the specific request. We can see that we've actually requested actions on this twice. We can see the progress of it. We can see who created it, right? We can see the time that's remaining until we've marked this thing to be due. And then also, like I said, we can set these exceptions, and I can actually go through my Defender for Endpoint device groups and say, you know what, this really doesn't make a lot of sense to apply to this group. In this particular case, my partial exception is for the device group servers, right? I'm not running Office on the servers. I probably don't really want to worry too much about this. I'm not super worried about creating this as a policy configuration for these devices when I also know that we have a programmatic or a HR policy that says thou shalt not install Office on a server, right? So we can come in and we can say, you know, except for these devices, and we're going to say that it's we're going to fix this one day. It's not right now. We can give an exception duration up to a year so that these things automatically expire and they come back. It's not a set it and forget it. We can actually make sure that we get reminders on this. So we have so much more reporting now on what we can do, how we can control, and how we can assign and how we can track what's happening with these security recommendations. Really jazzed about that. But the other thing that happened in this space too is that every Defender for Endpoint client is now an IoT sensor. And what that is allowing us to do is basically, so we you know, in an ideal world, right, we may have a network for our corporate IT devices. We may have a separate network for IoT, maybe even a separate network for OT. And that's great. That's fantastic. That is an ideal world. But where we see a lot of teams or a lot of organizations failing pen tests is IoT slips in, right? And maybe we don't know about it. Maybe it's the Nest thermostat on the wall. Maybe it's the smart coffee maker. Maybe it's any one of these things. But if it exists on the network and we're not managing it, we're not monitoring it, it could be a potential ingress. So what we now have is that every device in our Defender for Endpoint map has now the ability to identify IoT devices and say, you're not watching this, let me report on it. And that allows us to do agentless discovery of all of our IoT devices that are sitting out in our environment. And that is super cool. Now, I'm coming to the end. And obviously, they spent a lot of time at Ignite talking about the supply chain, right? We are coming to what we all hope might be a return to some flavor of normalcy. We're all trying to put gifts under the Christmas tree, and we've all been told that if you don't order it a month ago, you're probably not going to get it. We've heard some wild stories about that there are basically only 2 companies on the planet that can afford to get a shipping container from Southeast Asia to the West Coast of the United States. There are two companies on the planet. We have heard that you know, organizations are asking shipping companies, do you accept bribes, right? Can I fly a helicopter out to this ship that's sitting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and pick up my container, right? That's how bad supply chain is. You know, we all think about the Evergreen, Evergiven situation blocking the Suez Canal. It's so much bigger than that. And even once it lands, how do you get it from the shipyard? Well, actually off the ship into the shipyard, then from the shipyard onto a rail car, then from the, it goes on, and everything is backed up. And what we've discovered, or what Microsoft helped organizations discover, is that there's really no tool for managing this. So they invested a lot of money into creating the Microsoft Cloud for manufacturing. And these clouds, if you're not familiar, we've had a cloud for healthcare, we've had clouds for retail, we've had clouds for whatever. They are all prepackaged configurations of Dynamics with a few other bolt-ins added on. The cloud for manufacturing, which was itself new, also included a capability to monitor supply chain. And that is huge, right? As we start to see companies moving forward, as we start to see organizations and even governments trying to figure out how to change the distribution model such that ships don't come into one port and sit there for 2 or 3 months while things rot on the boat. We're trying to figure out now how to programmatically improve the operational experience of managing that supply chain so that we can divert, so we can redirect, so we can make sure that things just don't sit and rot in the space, never being able to be delivered to the end customer. We are trying to make sure that every manufacturing company on the planet has the ability to get their stuff where it needs to go instead of just 2 companies. So that's the big news. That's where we saw the core investments. Obviously, there were a million other things going on at Ignite, right? We got the ability to run Azure Virtual Desktop in Azure Stack. niche solution, but I am so excited to be able to say that if you are an organization that runs like ships, right? So part of the supply chain, right? The ships that sit out in the ocean, they don't always have internet connectivity, but they may be able to run an Azure Stack. Well, now we can actually deliver VDI directly to hardened, minimal sized devices inside those ships for those users to continue to operate the way that they need to without having to buy expensive, hardened, super powerful Windows devices. So much happening. I could drain for another hour if I wanted to, but we want to kind of keep this short and open it up to any questions that may exist. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to field anything that may be out there.
Yeah, so I will take back over really quick. You just made me, I'm so focused on Thanksgiving. The shipping thing just reminded me that Christmas, we need to get on that. But that was great. I know there was so much content or there was so much more to that Microsoft released. And so one of the immediate questions one of the first ones, oh, I lost it, one second. When you were speaking about Windows 365, there was a question that I think the question was, are there any that combine location so I'm a user on a trusted virtual desktop VLAN?
Okay, so I'm going to assume that that's actually a combination of conditional access and Windows 365. And we can absolutely assess as part of a conditional access policy where the user is coming from and where they're trying to go to. And actually, we can do that on both sides of the equation. And actually, one of the things that I've presented in the past is when you're granting access to either Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, you want to make sure that the right users can first get access to the front door of those services. So you want to have a conditional access policy that says only allow, let's say, domain joined machines to even get to Windows 365 in the first place, and then only allow the Windows 365 device to gain access into the applications that the user should use from that space. Yes, you can tie that to location, but there's a big but. Microsoft brought out the ability for us to do GPS-based location filtering back over the summer. And right now, that filtering capability is not compatible with Windows 365. I do not know for sure if it's compatible with Azure Virtual Desktop, but I do know for absolutely certain if you have a GPS conditional access policy in place, even if it's in report only mode, the device itself cannot participate in that scheme and it will fail the sign-in. It will throw back an error and the user will not be successful. So if you're testing GPS-based conditional access policies, I'm going to strongly advise that those be in an actually separate tenant from the Windows 365 environment for right now. We know that Microsoft is aware of the issue and they have been working to fix it, but that is a current limitation.
Got it. Okay, and so there weren't, and unless anyone wants, if you want to drop any more questions in the chat, that was the big one. And then I know Ignite has released like their book of news recordings, but for all the announcements that Adrian has announced, we will be demoing them in his tenant, as I'm sure you're, Adrian, trying to already like deep dive into all of these things. As
soon as they show up, I'm going to be throwing them back after you.
Yeah. But yeah, if you have any questions or you're interested in learning more, please, I've put the link under the Q&A for our security customer immersion experience where, like Adrian said, we'll go in and actually demo all of these things, as well as his email if you have any questions, concerns. But if there's no more questions, thank you so much for joining us today. You will receive a follow-up email with a recording to this by tomorrow. And keep up with us on social media and check our events page for any more upcoming webinars. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Adrian, again. You crushed it as always. But yeah, thank you, everyone, and have a great Thursday.